Hi everybody, it's Peter Stockdale, the host of the Spin Market Report. Are you looking for a new place to advertise your business? With over 85,000 YouTube impressions and 20,000 total streams across all platforms in the last 12 months, the Spin Market Podcast Network could be the prime space you've been looking for to advertise your business. Get a hold of Spin Market today and see what advertising on a podcast can do for you. Visit www.spinmarketwith2ks.com or email digitalagent@spinmarket.com for more information.
It's the Spin Market Report. Here's your host, Peter Stockdale.
What's up everybody? It's the Spin Market Report. We're back with another episode. I got Molly Varangkounh here. You are a CEPA and an inactive CPA, correct?
Yes.
All right. So you were a CPA or still technically just don't have the updated license basically.
Correct.
But let's start off. What's a CEPA? I don't think I've ever heard of that.
Yeah. It's actually, a lot of times we call it CEPA. And that stands for Certified Exit Planning Advisor.
Okay.
So it's someone that helps really prepare for a transition out of their business. And, it's a long-term process. So having an advisory team in place is usually a pretty powerful thing to do.
All right. So when you say help somebody transition out of their business, is it like somebody's leaving an industry, or is it, let's say somebody's owned a company for 40 years and they're leaving the company and they want to make sure the company stays with them leaving, or like what exactly are we talking about here? Or is it just like retirement planning or something? Like what exactly is it?
Yes. It's all of that. So a lot of times, we've probably heard of succession planning. A lot of times that's in relation to a family business, but there are a lot of other ways to exit a business. So typically it starts with a business owner, and then they start to look at their options. Some people want to sell it to the highest bidder. Some people want to transition to their family members. Some use an ESOP as an exit strategy. It's really preparing for that transition. It's inevitable that they will leave their business somehow, someday. Mm-hmm. And so really having a CEPA and having an exit planning team in place can help you keep doors open until you choose to close them.
Okay. So how did you, I don't think I've ever heard of a CEPA. Like, how did you find out what a CEPA was? Or was this something you've always kind of known in the back of your head and you're like, let's give it a whirl or something?
I actually didn't know anything about it either about a year ago. And I passed the CPA exam several years ago, and shame on me, I didn't keep up with my CPE. So my license is actually inactive. So I have the CPA license that's inactive. I was looking at ways to reinstate that license. And so getting caught up on my CPE, which is continuing professional education, mm-hmm. I was looking at getting that reinstated. And along the way, I found CEPA, the Certified Exit Planning Advisor, as an educational thing. I don't actually think it counted towards any of my CPE, but it was a topic that I was passionate about. I really enjoyed the course, and I'm enjoying learning how to use it in my client service every day.
That's cool. So you went out to go learn something and found something new, basically. Mm-hmm. That's perpetual learning. That's pretty awesome. I love it. So I also saw online you're a fractional executive and a CFO. Can you explain what exactly those are? We've all heard the terms CEO, et cetera, but what's a CFO and what's a fractional executive?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a CFO is a chief financial officer, and that's typically the top financial leader within a private organization, and or I guess it could be a public organization, but it's the internal accountant, the top level accountant or finance leader that usually oversees the majority of the financial aspects of the business. A lot of times it's a right-hand person to the CEO, and a lot of times the CEO is more entrepreneurial and visionary, and the CFO is someone who kind of helps either make it possible or provides guidance and financial modeling and things like that can help them understand what are some good business choices that we can make for what we want to do going forward.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely important. I think we've all like seen it, in our day-to-day lives where it's not easy to run a business. And sometimes it takes two people, one person with the vision and the other person with the analytical side of it all. And that's a really good, it's a really good pairing. It works for every other company, it seems like. So
Yep.
why wouldn't it work for you in your situation? So what inspired you to pursue a career as a CFO, or is that what you always were? Did you get a CPA and then go right to being a CFO, or like, how did that all work out?
No, I actually, and I want to go back because I don't think I answered part of your question earlier and I forgot.
Oh, okay.
But a fractional executive is someone who is, it's someone who's been in the role and now they've maybe stepped back from that full-time role and they're offering their services on more of a consultancy basis. A lot of times the fractional executive is someone who is, they maybe play that part in a smaller organization because that organization either doesn't have a need for a full-time hire, but they do have a need for that expertise.
Okay.
But they don't, the company can't necessarily take on the burden of a full-time hire, or they maybe just don't have they're just not big enough for that need.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to make sure to circle back on what a fractional executive is.
Okay. It's kind of wild though that you're like an administrator, you're in the upper levels of management, but you're basically part-time.
Right.
That's pretty cool actually though.
Yeah. But if we think about it, the attorneys of the world, they've been providing fractional services since day one.
Yeah.
So it's pretty similar to that. And really you pay for what you use. And so, different companies have different structures, and you can put, I want to have a 1 day of a week out of, of work, or, it can be a certain project that is, a lot of times systems implementations that requires an extra set of hands. And so some companies are larger and they still, they still engage a fractional or interim solution because they know that it's not a forever situation, but they do need that extra set of expertise, or people that are going through a merger or an acquisition. They need, a couple of sets of extra hands to pull all the documents and everything together. And so really there are different ways to get to the same end. But a lot of times it's just, it's companies that don't need something forever or don't need a full-time hire. And another thing that I did mention was interim. Mm-hmm. So interim is, we provide interim solutions with, say, someone could have left a role and they need someone to step in and fill the role until a permanent hire is put in place, mm-hmm. Or military leaves, maternity leaves, things like that, where an organization is big enough that they have, say, a CFO or a CHRO or different executive levels. They have a full-time hire, but for some reason there's a gap from one day to the next, mm-hmm. and so they need someone to step in because their existing team isn't able to hold it together without some additional resources.
So you talked about like mergers. Is that ever a situation where you could like just be brought in to like supplement a CFO that's already there, where it's like, well, because sometimes it's hard to see the big picture from the inside. So right. Is that a situation where that might also be a case where you get hired for that?
Yep, absolutely. And, a lot of times there's due diligence that needs to happen. There are, the different processes to make that transition and that transaction a successful one. So having different people that maybe have had different expertise. So on my team at Altus CXO, we have different people that bring different levels and different experiences that they've had in their lives. And so we can have a quick call out to anybody like, hey, has anybody ever done X, Y, or Z? And then we pull them in and we're able to tap into those resources as well. So that's one of the great things about working with a firm like Altus CXO is we're able to pull in the different expertise as needed.
Nice. So you're not just limited to for example, if you're working for yourself, they wouldn't be limited to just you and your knowledge. You have the knowledge base of your peers as well.
Exactly.
I like that a lot. So we go back to what inspired you to do this. It was just that continuing education programs that you'd taken and you were kind of like, this is neat? Or how did you find out about Altus CXO? Or is that like I got so many questions, you know, is that a nationwide company? Is it a local company? Is it?
So Altus CXO it's a group. We're about 20. I think we're up over 20 now. We just started in earlier this year, April, May-ish.
Okay.
And some of us had worked together in the past. Others have just been connections of connections. But to go back, I never was an actual CFO before I became a fractional one. So I actually ran my family's manufacturing business up in Humboldt. And so at that time, my role, and that's kind of why my CPE ran out, because I was not focusing on being a CPA. I was focusing on running an organization. And so, you know, all things tie back to the numbers. So I was very intimately aware of, and I was responsible for the financials. So I always kind of like to think of myself as I was an unofficial CFO of our organization. But along the way, I actually started to think about, I don't have that right-hand person for myself. So I actually engaged a fractional CFO to be my right-hand person at the time. And so I really liked I liked the process. I liked her perspective. She came in and really just hit the ground running with different perspectives and different vantage points than what we had. I had a great team at our company, but many of us had a lot of tenure, and that can bring pros and cons. You know, there can be challenges where those are the only things that we'd experienced were the things that happened within our walls. So to bring someone that had outside experience and perspectives, it was really pretty valuable. And, you know, that was also at a time where I was just looking at some different, you know, it was a different career pivotal point in my life. And so it just kind of hit me at the exact moment that I needed, where I had been 20 years in my role at the company. And then I was kind of doing some self-reflection on, is this where I want to be the next 20 years? Or is it time to take take a different career path? And so to kind of find out that the fractional world existed at the same time that I was having some just career thoughts about what's next, what's my next chapter look like. It kind of just came at the right time, and I started to think about, how can I dust off my actual accounting background and experience, and take what I had done in my family's company and help other companies do some of the same things.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking Altus CXO. Can you describe exactly what it is? What kind of services you provide? I mean, we kind of glossed over your fractional officers. Right. Are you all CFOs, or are there other types of fractional officers that are available there?
The CXO is exactly that.
Oh, so the X could be anything.
The X could be anything.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, it's like a fill in the blank spot.
I like it.
Exactly.
2020X, whatever you. Okay. So I like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of services? Is it literally anything officer related you can do, or?
So we have several different CX or C levels. And what we find is a lot of times when an organization has a financial need that also blends over to, they have a human resources need, or a technology need, or a marketing need. So a lot of times when those organizations they're working on elevating to that next level, they have a need for multiple disciplines, but they don't have the resources to drop in a full C-suite in their organization.
What is your role as a CFO with Altus CXO? So, like, what does a typical day look like for you? Do you go, like, every day you're at a different company, or do you kind of just fill in as you're needed, or do you provide support remotely, or how does that all work out?
It's kind of a mixed bag of all those things. So each one of us we're independent contractors within the Altus umbrella. So each one of us is really kind of running our own business.
Okay.
And with a shared brand and shared resources. And so there can be times where multiple are working on one client. So we have one client right now where I know we have a CFO and a CHRO and a CTO and possibly even a controller. Okay. So we have 4 people at one location. And so usually there's one lead of that engagement, and then each person kind of performs their specialty. So a typical day for me, I'm usually performing some really client engagement. Sometimes it's on-site, sometimes it's remote. It depends on what that organization needs, depends on the culture, and really just what's you're trying to accomplish. And sometimes when you're doing the bean counting thing, you can do that from your basement if you want. But a lot of times with the leadership side of things, it does require more interpersonal interaction, and so going on site can provide a pretty valuable thing. So it's usually a healthy balance of that. Our associates I think about 80% of us are out of Iowa, but we have probably 3 or 4 other states that we have people in, and our clients are nationwide.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Okay, so we talked about what a CEPA does and basically what your general role is there. Like, how does that influence your approaches at Altus CXO? Like, is that the only role you fill, or is it your other, like your background in accounting? Does that also come into play there? Or is it just like a blend of all of your knowledge from the past coming in to help somebody out? And if you need, then you can go to the Altus umbrella and pull somebody else in.
Yep. It's really more of a business matchmaking. And so, I feel really good about my ability to dial in where I can fit, and then maybe where my services or my expertise begins and ends. And then I just make it my priority to make sure I know what my team members, where their sweet spots are. And so if a client is looking for a certain thing, then, if I don't know how to do that, I tap the shoulder of one of my colleagues. If I do, then we'll just kind of walk through what that looks like. And then it takes all of the history and experience, you roll it up and you try to just make sure that you're providing the best thing that client needs. Oftentimes what they come and ask for and what they ultimately need, they're not always the same thing. So sometimes it takes a little bit of digging and understanding what the actual problems are to help prescribe a possible solution.
I was wondering that, because sometimes, like, again, we were talking, like, as an entrepreneur, you might be like, I want to cross the finish line and I'm going to take this route. And you're like, there's a straighter route. There's a more scenic route. There's a faster route. There could be different ways to get to that finish line than the other person, because they're limited to just what they've, like you said, seen inside their 4 walls, and they might not look at the whole industry. They might not understand that there's different avenues they can take, just because their tried and true might not be the best avenue to take.
Right.
So exit planning, we talked a little bit about it. Is it different than regular business planning? I mean, we talked about, you're kind of like handing a company off, but like, are you just trying to ensure that the ship stays straight? Or is there something else that we're kind of trying to do here where you're trying to pass on the culture of the company or anything like that? Or is it kind of just up to what they want out of it? Because you said sometimes it's like, well, maybe we want to make this as nice as we can and highest bidder.
Yep.
Yep.
And I mean, that's really what the point is to understand early enough what that business owner's goals are, and then start to take the steps to make that possible.
Okay.
So, oftentimes what happens all too frequently is business owners, they delay and delay having the conversations, because they kind of feel a little bit, I don't know, they're hard, they're delicate. And so a lot of times they'll wait until they're kind of on the downhill slide to start taking action. And by that time, many, a lot of times the options are more limited than they would have been, years ago. So the best exits started planning several years ago, and then they take steps to help build value, build something that someone else might want to buy. Because a lot of times if the business owner is the center of all decisions, or is the best salesperson in the organization, or does all the things, that makes it less valuable to someone else.
That's why I like this podcast. I get about halfway through every interview, and I'm like, I'm getting this now. I'm getting it. This
I feel
is
like
really
these
good.
last couple podcasts have been like very eye-opening and
Yeah.
a lot to learn in this short amount of time that we're here.
Yeah, I honestly didn't know there were fractional officers until like a year ago. Like, how long has that been a thing? Is it just like a newish trend, or has it always been a thing?
I think it really became, it's been around for a while, but I think COVID itself really made it a little more mainstream because, being able to be offsite, there's the, people working remotely, that became a lot more normal during COVID. And so it opened up some doors for the gig economy, which, that's kind of, in a sense, that's kind of what this is. And so I found for myself, it was a better fit for me to join a team that I knew I could lean on. I didn't have to make sure that every client that had a problem, I had to fit what I could do into that, square peg in a round hole.
Yep.
It felt better for me to be able to, I have people that can help solve your problem. Let me do some, let me make some quick calls and see who knows how to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. That'd be an intimidating thing if you go in like, I can do 80% of this perfectly, and then I have to work really hard at the last 20. It's like, it'd be awesome if I could reach out and just say, hey, come on over and help me out for real quick for this.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We had talked about what exit planning is and how it benefits companies, how it's different than just traditional business. Are there any like indicators that, let's say somebody's listening and they're like, oh man, I was thinking about leaving, or what are the key indicators that somebody might need to actually start doing exit planning?
Well, if they own a business, that's an indicator. They should, even if they're young, starting now is helpful. And really good exit strategy is good business strategy. So putting the things in place, making the business something that's valuable to someone else, it puts money in the pocket of the owner until someone else wants to buy it. So, doing the things that make it valuable to someone else, that's good business strategy.
Yeah.
And then you really just have the options to, you want to keep it in your family, then you can turn the dial a little bit and talk about succession planning and keeping it within your family unit. If you want to look at what's the value, so you can sell it for the highest dollar, then the things are already in place because it's a good business. Someone else is going to want it, and everything in between. So what happens all too frequently is people wait too long, and then I think I can't remember the percentage. There's a ginormous percentage of businesses that they finally decide it's time to hang it up, and nobody wants to buy them, so they just shut their doors.
Ooh, that'd be so rough, especially, and that's those things where you think like, this company's going to be around forever, and it just disappears, and you're like, how did this just disappear?
Right.
That's how that happens.
Right.
Okay. So planning ahead, planning early, like you said, this isn't exactly the exact same thing as like business planning, but they're hand in hand.
Absolutely.
One benefits the other tremendously. So we had also talked about, you go into these meetings sometimes with people and you have to kind of figure out what they want and the best way to get there. What are some common misconceptions people have about exit planning? Are they just like, I'm just going to hand it all over to you and you're going to do it and it's going to be great and I'm going to retire, or I'm going to transition to a different profession of some sort? Or like, do they think it's going to be easy and it's actually not easy, or?
It's definitely not easy. Yeah. There are financial components to it and there are emotional components to it. So a lot of times the business owner, their whole lives are tied up in making that business what it is. So to have them finally decide to walk away, what are they going to do the day they hang up their keys? Mm-hmm. That's the biggest thing. Like so many deals fall off the table because the owner doesn't can't imagine their life without going into the office or going into the shop or whatever their job is. They can't imagine life without that being a part of it. So there's a strong part of figuring out what's your personal plan, because having a personal plan makes that exit more possible. Then there are tools in place to help identify how do you what's the current value. There are intangible values in a business. So the human capital, the social capital, the structural capital, and there's one other that I can't remember. There's 4 intangible capitals though, and having a measuring device to measure those intangibles, that helps raise your actual value, because that means it's something that someone else can have without the owner being in place. If everything revolves around that owner, and if they step away, then it's going to be really hard for anyone to make a go of that business without that owner in place.
Or to fill the gap, because I mean, a lot of times the owner is the person who had the passion in the first place, and it's tough to find somebody with the exact. I mean, they might have the passion, but it might not be the exact same fit. That square peg and a round hole thing there. So it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we had talked about. Believe it or not, you're answering these questions before I even get to them, because your answers are so good. But we talked about how exit planning is beneficial to the business. It could also be beneficial to the stakeholders if the company has stakeholders, because you're increasing the worth of the business, which in turn could increase, pay for the employees. It could create a better business model that the customers could enjoy as well. So there's a lot of benefits to here. And I was going to ask you all that stuff, but again, you already explained all that stuff. How does marketing impact exit planning? Is that something that is involved, or is that something that's just, I mean, I guess it probably ties into the business model a little bit.
Absolutely. I think, marketing is everywhere, and I think that anybody that's in business or anybody that's in the world, if you're not paying attention to your personal brand or your personal marketing, then you're missing out. And I think that all of that can be just the level goes up, the different parts of your role within an organization, but there's always marketing, and there's, helping people understand, what am I doing? Where do I fit in the world, and why is this role within the company important? That's marketing. So there can be internal marketing that helps people understand why what they're doing makes a difference. And then there can be external marketing to you need marketing to be able to sell your stuff, whether it's products, whether it's services. Marketing plays a part in helping build that brand, which, and build the trust that people want to do business with you. And that happens from within the 4 walls and externally to your paying customers as well.
Yeah, I also thought marketing was so weird, because like you said, it is literally everything. And there's so many times, I think we brought it up once on this podcast, where it's like, you almost like don't want to be marketed to the stuff you don't want. But when somebody markets something you want to, you're like, I'm so glad I have this information. And you're basically just communicating with somebody, you know? So yeah. I think that's what I'm seeing like here is you focus a lot on business aspects, but a lot of what you're focusing on is also the intangibles. It's the stuff that, again, the business-minded entrepreneur might not see, because they're just seeing the nuts and bolts every single day in the shop, and they're not actually seeing the big picture.
Right.
Are there any marketing mistakes that companies make or owners make that might impact their exit strategy? I know it's kind of like weird to tie marketing into this, because it, like you said, it sometimes it takes a while to bake. But have you ever seen companies where they're headlong into this marketing strategy that they're going to do, and all of a sudden somebody's going to leave, and it's like, oh no, what's going to happen here?
It's probably, I can't come up with a specific example at this moment, but if the marketing is tied back to a certain person who is going to leave, then that might leave a pretty big gap. And so, that will be a hole that will need to be filled, and that's going to be hard. So whoever will be coming in to fill that gap, it's probably going to be better to build a brand around the organization as opposed to a single person.
Ah, yes. Again, the single owner, the person that does everything. If you have one person that's the main salesperson, decision maker, you don't market that person, you market the brand itself and the services, not just the one person's, it's not like just come see Bob over here because Bob's the man. And then all of a sudden Bob leaves and it's like, I want to go see Bob. Well, he's not here anymore, and you did no marketing for the company. Okay, this is, I like this. Again, this is stuff where I think that this is, the farther we get into this, the more I actually really, really like this. So can you share any success stories where you worked at Altus CXO, maybe helping a business owner achieve their goals, or maybe just say like some of the more rewarding parts of your job?
The rewarding parts of the job, and it's mostly because Altus has only been around for a few months. So, we do have good success stories, but they're still in percolation mode, right? So, but a lot of the, the success stories, they are to come. But it's like seeing the aha moments or seeing someone go like, oh, in fact, I just had a potential client meeting today and I could just tell like some of the things that we were talking about. She was thinking like, that's exactly what's missing from my life. And so that's the type of thing that, I tend to be more of a, like an educator and helping people understand the why behind things. So helping that education happen and helping them learn how to do some of the things that, they're roads that I've been down before. So I can drive down them with my eyes closed, but they haven't been down the road yet. So kind of watching the reactions and those interactions are just powerful. And they're so, they feel good and that you're on the right path.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably watching me have the aha moment here, and I'm not even, purchasing your services, but I assume there's got to be a level of stress you see kind of just melt away from people to an extent, where it's like, I don't have to do this all alone. Yes. And even though this is cumbersome, there's somebody here to help, and that's got to be a great feeling.
One of my colleagues, she had the leader in the organization she's helping, and she said that he pulled her aside and said, I don't know what I did before you were here.
Hey, it makes sense. I mean, again, this is another thing, like what you're saying, you're talking to people and educating them. I'm having the aha moment right now. So I went online, I researched this, I brought a bunch of questions because I didn't know exactly what I needed to know, but now that I know it, it's like, this seems necessary. I mean, and again, at the time I didn't know it was something that was even a thing, but now it's like, I don't know how somebody could function without, or how a company would even, like, especially to pass the reins on to somebody else. I didn't realize it was such a daunting task, but like you said, if one person is so ensconced in the company, and a lot of times that's the entrepreneurial companies, that's the way they go. You might have a couple trips and falls trying to pass the baton, and that's not what you want. You want to just have smooth sailing onto the next person.
And we're at a time where there's a huge amount of businesses that are still owned by the baby boomer generation, and they don't have a good plan in place yet. There's a thing called the silver tsunami, where there's this huge groundswell of boomers that are leaving the workforce, and also they still hold a majority of the businesses, the privately held businesses. And so if we're able to be here in support of their transition, hopefully we're not too late. And so helping them face some of the difficult conversations, helping them prepare the next generation to come in, and really just helping them be that support system that they didn't know they needed. Because if they aren't, if they're not able to pass it on to somebody, the rest of us as service, community members and service providers, then we have our population of people who we can help is going to diminish quickly as well. And so we all have a, pretty big responsibility, and we should be caring about, who's in place and how do we help them be successful, or the businesses won't be.
Yeah. I mean, that makes me think, like you'd mentioned Humboldt earlier. That's where I'm from. And I mean, let's just take small town Iowa. Let's imagine there's a, mechanic or something there, and it's been there for 40 years. And then, mechanic ABC decides he's going to retire and doesn't do any exit planning. And now you have random person takes over the company. It changes. It's not the same. or maybe the doors just close and that's the end of it. Well, now you got a whole small town or a whole community that's missing out on a service that's no longer there too. I mean, this impacts everybody down the line. This isn't
Absolutely.
I think just being from a small town, that's kind of, we see a fair amount of that. Not picking on Humboldt, it just happens in every small town. But that's the exodus of the masses. If they don't have any reason, if they don't have anybody to pass it on to, and nobody has any reason to take it over, then it just kind of goes away. And that's not, I don't know, it's just sad to see a company go, especially if it's something that a community needs. We're getting down to the last couple questions here. What advice would you give a business owner that possibly feels overwhelmed by all of this? Maybe overwhelmed by the financial aspects of trying to pass the company on, or just by, the financial aspects of wanting to leave the company, or any exit planning in general?
I think every business owner, what I would tell them is there are resources available, and it's really just acknowledging that they maybe need some help. And that's okay. They're, reaching out and having a conversation, finding the right fit for them is critical. Just, if Susie or Sally or Tom or John aren't the right fit for them, keep looking. It doesn't mean that a fractional advisor or, executive or an exit planning advisor isn't what they need. It maybe is that person isn't the right fit for them. So to just keep, looking for what's the right cultural fit, what's the right personality dynamics for what they're looking for, but then also being prepared for someone to push back a little bit on them. And a lot of times the top leader, they're kind of used to making their own calls and not having anybody, push back on them a little bit. And so being open to someone else having an expertise that might make them a little uncomfortable, but knowing if they don't face those uncomfortable situations and conversations early on, they'll be way more uncomfortable down the road.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these entrepreneurial places, it's people that have found a way to make the company work because they basically did all the work the whole way up. And now we're at a point where they don't know, or they need somebody to come in from the outside. And sometimes that's hard, just asking for help.
Yep, exactly.
And I feel that for sure. I got something down here. Community projects you're involved in. You personally involved in Intentional Connections, correctly? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I don't know, it's been maybe a year and a half or so. I got an email from, she's actually a Fort Dodge native, Molly Lopez. And she said, hey, here's this small group we're putting together. You're invited to come. And so I went to a small group and loved it. It was just an amazing group of women. And so at that time it was like, ooh, they said, well, we'll see you later. This has been fantastic. Well, there were some, there was a lot of positive feedback, and it's grown and grown and grown. And that's down in the Des Moines area. And then they've since decided, or Cheryl, Spin Market owner, and I decided, how do we bring something like this to the Fort Dodge and Humboldt community? And so we've since been working to bring women together, and the mission is where women can feel seen, heard, and valued. And it's just it's a networking, it's a collaboration, it's really just a place where we can come together and with a little bit of programming, but a little bit, a lot of connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I know Mac and Mackenzie, you guys go to the Intentional Connections meetings for sure. Anything on that, Mac?
Yeah. I mean, I'm actually one of the 5 team members. So it's definitely a cool experience to be a part of. I don't know how to explain it. It's just such a positive atmosphere. The other members, the people that run it, Molly, Lisa, Stephanie, and now Wendy and I. But they just have such a great, personality, they want to support every single person that comes in there and be very welcoming to them. And so it's just such a cool event to be a part of.
Yep. And I know that I personally hate networking events. They're so awkward, and you usually just get sweaty palms when you're walking in going like, oh, another one of these things I know I have to do. And when I went to the very first one, and everyone since then, it's been, this isn't like one of those things that you have to like scratch your head trying to figure out what to talk about. There's a little bit of in the intentional guided conversation. So you don't have to come up with a weird, like, what do you do? Or, you know, like the awkward conversations. It's a little bit more prescribed, but it's structured flexibility. Like make it what you want. And then it becomes more natural. And then it kind of helps build some confidence in other environments where it's like, oh, I can do that. And so then being, you know, kind of building that networking muscle, building that confidence in having just a conversation with someone, it's a little bit of a safe space for something like that as well.
I also feel like in reverse also it helps you listen to the people when they talk, because that's always a big thing that I see. I mean, I take photos there, but it's such a big thing that, you know, not only are you having the conversation, but are you listening to it?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Nice. So we're down to the last question here. Is there a time in your life where marketing's impacted you and you possibly didn't know it until afterwards?
It's probably, it's in a quiet conversation that it's, you know, you can always tell later that someone had a very intentional approach to the questions they were asking, how they were asking it, and the order in which they were asking. But they were asking me, so I ended up marketing to myself as opposed to someone, you know, it doesn't feel good. It feels like sales when someone's pushing things at you, but if they're drawing it out, a lot of times I think that's a personal marketing that happens that is way more powerful than someone shoving information at you.
Oh yeah. Trying to pull it out of somebody to gain maybe a connection or to get information across, instead of just saying, it's almost like instead of saying like, hey, do this, you're asking somebody what, like your job, you're asking what are your goals? Let's ask 50 questions and now let's make a plan, instead of just going in there and being like, how about we just do this?
Right.
I like that. I like that a lot. So it ties right back into exactly what you do. This has been a great conversation. I really want to say thank you for taking time out of your day. Obviously, you're busy. We're traveling from one place to the next and met us in the middle, and we rearranged a little bit of schedules here to make this all work out. So I want to say thank you very much for taking time out of your day.
Yes, thank you, and thanks for the flexibility. We had to jostle calendars a couple of times, but I appreciate it. And
it works.
Thank you to you and the team.
I'm glad you're here. All the links are going to be down below, so make sure you check out the links for Molly. And we're out of here. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
This podcast is produced by Spin Market and Digital. Located in Fort Dodge, Iowa, Spin Market's highly skilled team can help you increase your market by updating your website, improving SEO, designing advertisements, and producing podcasts that will grab the attention of your market. Contact Spin Market today for all your digital marketing needs at digitalagent@spinmarket.com or call us at 515-302-8026. And to learn more, visit our website at www.spinmarket.com. That's digitalagent@spinmarket.com or 515-302-8026. Or visit our website at www.spinmarket.com.